Hello, hello. Welcome once again to another edition of Quoth Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 33-year veteran of comic, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. It's Thursday, February 6th, and it's time once again for news and reviews with my co-host with the most, John Norris. Here he is.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're waiting a little bit on our other co-host, Chris Hall, to arrive. Hopefully he'll be here shortly. You might be having some technical issues. I don't know yet. But it's been kind of a busy week. Had a vet appointment today for the kitty cat, midnight, and it went as well as can be expected. He had some blood work done. Won't know what the results are for a couple of days, but hopefully nothing too serious. Everything's stayed relatively even keel with him. For those who don't know, he's got some kidney issues, and we don't know how much. He hasn't shown any signs of complete degradation yet, but it's going to come eventually. How's your week been so far, John?
It's been good. Pretty normal. Yeah, at church, we're in between worship ministers right now, so I've been leading our Wednesday night rehearsals. But other than that, just things are kind of business as usual.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, and we got a lot to get to, and I'm hoping that Chris is going to get here soon. I don't want to be here all night.
Do we have any Q&A or stuff like that?
Not so much this week. They've been kind of quiet as far as that goes. But there's so much stuff that we were supposed to do this week. I didn't even get all of it read, so we're going to have to postpone some of it until next week. But what we do know, for one of the things that's news, is that there are several groups that are starting to counteract or react to the Diamond bankruptcy situation. And hopefully next week we're going to have some guests who are running some of those not oppositions, but there's the kitty. You want to see hello, everybody? Mm-hmm. You want to see? He wants to back up in my lap. Come here. Come on. You want to say hi to everybody on TV? I know. Here he is.
Hi, Midnight.
Here's the kitty. Yep, I'm here. I'm alive. But yeah, I don't. He's something else. But as I was saying, hopefully we'll get some of those people on the show as guests next week to talk about some of the new distribution attempts they're going to be working towards, so that we have alternatives for independent comics. I know one by T.C. Ford. He's got two methodologies that he wants to try and present. I don't know if he's going to do both of them at the same time or just one or the other, depending on what the demand is. One will be kind of like a newsstand level where books are returnable, but you get less discount. And then there'll be one that's like the normal high level discount, but not returnable. So I don't know. We'll talk more about that next week when I have him on the show, hopefully. And there's another one as well that I want to talk about that Chris and I have both seen and done a little bit of research on. So it's it'll be interesting when we get to those situations next week. Also next week, hopefully on Monday, I'm going to do a manga night where I just do a review of manga, 1 or 2 mangas. And then Tuesday next week, we're going to bring back crowdfunding. So there are things coming down the pike for down the pipeline for next week anyway. Okay, well, I'm waiting, and I haven't heard from Chris. Let me see what's going on. Yeah, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started with our reviews.
All right.
We'll start with Aaron Lopresti's Kit Carter Galactic Ranger, Planet Doom one-shot. There are 2 versions of this book, a soft cover, which is $30, and a hardcover, which was $60. Publisher is Empire Comics, Cold Crocodile Press. Writer and penciler Aaron Lopresti, inker Matt Ryan, colorist Kelsey Shannon. The cover A that you see here is the Chris Stevens cover, and the B cover for hardcover is by Aaron. Back cover by Dan Lawless. Genre science fiction comedy adventure, released in November 2024. What it's about. Kit Carter is an elite ranger in the Galactic Alliance Freedom Force, also known as GAF. Along with her partner, Merv the Astrochimp, she polices the galaxy, bringing the most dangerous villains and tyrants to justice. Lord Menace is the tyrant king of a dying monster-infested planet, codenamed Planet Doom. In a dangerous and desperate move, he acquires the Eye of Amanon and employs its unmatched power to rejuvenate his planet and create forces to conquer the galaxy. Kit and Merv are dispatched to stop him, but is this the one adversary that even they can't handle? Find out in this irreverent space adventure inspired by 1950s sci-fi B movies. What did I think of this? This is just a fun-loving romp of a comic, a love letter to 1950s B sci-fi movies. I've been wanting the Kit Carter comic like this out of Aaron since I don't remember how long ago, at least a decade ago, and he delivered in spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds.
Wow.
The cover here, seen by Chris Stevens, is absolutely gorgeous. Let me go ahead and give heck, I won't take it out of the cover. If I can get that. There we go. Hopefully you won't get so much sheen off of it. There you go.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah. And I got both of them because I just like to support Aaron. Hold on a second. Got a message from Chris. Okay. Chris is not going to actually be on tonight. Certain things going on at the house immediately. So I don't know what's going on, but I'll check in with him later. Okay. But all right. So apologies on Chris's behalf for not being able to make it tonight. But there's cover from Chris again. And then the back cover by Dan Lawless. This back cover is both there. The hard cover, which I'll show you in a minute, and the back cover. And it, like I said, absolutely gorgeous cover. There's your hardcover cover. The book opens with the events of that were done with the Kit Carter backup story in Wraith of God Blood Hunters, which we'll talk in a little bit about that. Her encounter with the lava rock creature Schmagma is hilarious. Kit getting her flight suit burned off, but still leaving the private parts covered, while Merv whines about having used their spaceship's coolant to free Schmagma. The beer! Think about the beer! It's just silly and fun. Then they really have to report back to base, have Kit deal with the equipment manager for replacement for her suit. Heat shield. Since when does your suit have do the suits have heat shields? You'll be lucky if it fits. And you think about this. She basically went up against a lava creature thinking sure her suit had a heat shield. You think, how did she survive? But it's that kind of irrelevant funniness that he's playing with. The scene with Captain in action, which is her boss, is part Mel Brooks, part Roger Corman, part Robin Williams, Mork from Ork. There's just so many winks and nods to other things that he's clearly just running and doing a fun pastiche to all of those things. And he hits the right pace, the right punchlines consistently throughout the book. And to me, this is what comics should be. Just fun, not taking yourself too seriously, but still serious enough to have good execution of the work and stuff like that. And I love the format of this book. This is 8.5 by 11 size format. I like this much better than your normal floppy size comics. Personally, you get better vision of what you're looking at. The lettering isn't so crunched down. A lot of stores are kind of hesitant and reluctant to carry this kind of a format. I don't know why Americans are like this. This is typical European format model for comics. Typical in other countries in Japan and in other Asian countries as well. Yes, they also have the 5x7s, but they have a lot of these as well. So let's go ahead and show a little bit of the interior art. There's Schmagma.
Wow, that's a cool design.
Yeah. And and if you remember in the Wraith of God pit-up or short stories, that was based off of the comic strip version that he originally did. She was making him count to 1,000 or whatever until they could find what they were going to do. So he's like, I've waited, I've counted, I'm not counting anymore. Where are you? Right here.
Nice.
Very nice double page spread out on that. Now I'm not going to get into the whole. Should I get into the where? Yeah, okay. He basically pukes on her flame. And I'm not gonna show all of the stuff. I mean, it's not like he ever does anything that shows her inappropriate. I mean, it only burns just the right part of the, she's covered, but the rest of it burns away. And they use the ship's coolant to freeze him into little rock pieces, and he's going, ow, 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 you suck. So a lot of cool stuff with that. And here's her talk with Captain in action. She's got a new suit, and of course, smoking a cigar in a non-smoking section.
Of course,
in his bubble suit with the hat or with the air bubble, but of course it has a port to let all the smoke get out so he can see and still breathe. Little things like that just are really amusing to me on this. So anyway, if this had been done by anyone other than himself as a crowdfunding book, it probably would have been completely dumped on by the comic book retailers because, like I said, American comic shops tend to be reluctant to carry anything that size. And that's why I always have to constantly order all my European comics from overseas online and have them shipped them to me because the retailers don't want my money. But I digress. I hope we get a lot more of this book in the future. But I know that Aaron's got so many ideas and other concepts he wants to do as well. And it makes me really wish that he had started doing this stuff back when I first saw it in the 90s. This is the hardcover edition.
Okay.
And, I think you guys can see it well enough without me taking it out of the bag.
Yeah.
It's a good thick book for the hardcover. Again, the same back cover with Dan Lawless. So there's that one. And I give this one 5 stars.
Wow. High praise indeed.
I'm going to go ahead and put the kit cover thing back there. And I don't know if I... Okay, speaking of Aaron, we're just going to go straight to all of his stuff. Oh, by the way, the crowdfunding also had this shirt that I got, the Kit Carter Galactic Ranger shirt.
Cool.
But there's a lot more of Aaron to talk about, so let's keep going. Aaron Lopresti's Wraith of God. This is the first print edition, $25 from Empire Comics. Creator, writer, artist Aaron Lopresti with colors by Gabe Altabe. Additional back cover design by Dale Keown with back cover art by Don Edwards. Lettering by Warren Montgomery. Genre, horror, western, pulp hero. This was originally released in late July, early August 22, and is sold out, but there is a second printing available, and I'll show you where to get that in just a little bit. The story begins in Columbia, Missouri, in the September of 1883. The Wraith of God has tracked a pack, not a back. I don't know how I mistyped that. A pack of the Brotherhood of the Wolf, a werewolf cult, to their camp and attacks them. In the ensuing battle, one of the wolves escapes and kills the Wraith's horse, Gabriel. I don't know if that's why. I don't know. It's an interesting name for your horse. But anyway, the Wraith returns to his camp where his assistant Esther, though at this point she is not named, is waiting. Realizing that his steed is missing, she asks what has happened, and the Wraith explains that they have to track the last one of the members of the werewolf to Calamity, Arizona. And this was the second cover that Aaron did, variant cover. The story quickly then cuts to October 7th, 1883 in Calamity, Arizona. We see the Wraith and Esther in their wagon on the way to town when Esther sees the Wraith, what she thinks is the Wraith's horse waiting for them up the trail, appearing out of nowhere. She stops freaking out, and what's going on? I thought the horse was dead, And the Wraith investigates, and it is his horse, or so it appears. When Esther questions it, the Wraith sneers and tells her never to question him. She's conflicted because she really wonders if the Wraith is a supernatural force of God's will, or if he has deceived her. But supernatural events like this one give her cause to believe and stay at the Wraith's side as his sidekick. Meanwhile, the town of Calamity has a new sheriff and a sort of outsider, Orrin Hull, who are suspicious characters. The Wraith and Esther arrive and take shelter in a nearby abandoned silver mine, which makes sense. You want to have silver mine to protect yourself from the werewolves. Right? They're not going to come where the silver is. The Wraith expects the werewolf that had gotten away in Missouri to arrive by stagecoach the next day, and he goes to town to prepare while Esther rests. She asks him why he won't call her by her name, but gets no reply from him. This leads to a flashback to 6 months earlier from Esther, when she was just a beginning volunteer at a Salvation Army station, and how she meets a young man named Jacob, who professes to love her, but she cannot commit to him because of her commitment to God's work. This is another cover depicted by Lopresti here. Later that evening at the Salvation Army's building, a fire breaks out, and Jacob tells her to evacuate everyone, but while he tends to try to put out the fire. She tries to return to the building when the building expansively blazes, and she gets caught in the fire when the Wraith appears to her out of nowhere and takes her out of the fire, with Jacob seemingly dying in the blaze. Well, I guess I know where that is. What's really going on, right? Cut to the town in present time, in Calamity. A short elderly man is looking for whomever came into town on the stagecoach. The sheriff tells him 2 men and a woman came in, one an Oriental. The Oriental man is then shown speaking to Orrin Hull, whom it appears is a famous monster hunter from Old England, and that he may possess an amulet that would allow a werewolf who wore it to become invulnerable. The Oriental requests to purchase the amulet from Hull, but Hull rebukes the offer and claims no knowledge of such items. Of course, the old man asking questions is the Wraith in disguise. He's been keeping an eye on all the newcomers and returns to the mine and changes into his Wraith attire and then rides off on patrol for the werewolf, telling Esther to watch over their hideout while also to be wary of odd things going on. Unfortunately, by the time the Wraith gets to Hull's home, the wolf has already gotten to him and has gutted him. The Wraith shoots him with silver bullets, but they magically expel out of the wolf's body because he has the amulet in question in his possession. Stupidly, however, the wolf explains this to him, and the Wraith manages to hurl a knife through the wrist of the creature, making him drop the amulet, which doesn't quite make sense, but we'll go with it. I mean, if bullets bounce off him, and why would a silver knife affect him and go through his wrist so he dropped the amulet? I don't know, but we won't worry about that. The Wraith collects the amulet. The werewolf flees, knowing it can't take any more silver bullets if it doesn't have the amulet in its possession. Hull, dying, explains that the amulet will only work when they are in their wolf form and they are still vulnerable while in human form, and then asks that his body be burned so he doesn't turn into a wolf himself. So apparently, even if you were dying as a werewolf, if you're infected with the wolf, you'll come back after you're dead in this version of the universe. The Wraith then burns the home with Hull in it, and the sheriff arrives to confront him. The Wraith creates a smoke screen and then knocks the sheriff out and takes him back to town to leave him there to recuperate. This is the variant cover and another T-shirt design that was done for the Wraith of God campaign by Dale Keown and colors by Gabe Altabe.
Cool. I
have that shirt. I'm just not wearing it because I was promoting Kit Carter. And then he goes back to the hideout in the mine. There we have a flashback from the Wraith's perspective as to who he really is, which is a former circus magician who was seduced by the circus owner's wife to try and steal the money from the circus and leave with the wife, only to be set up by the wife, who then kills her husband and frames him as the one who killed her husband and sets the trailer on fire. And so he's like, oh, great, and he's all burned up like, Phantom of the Opera or whatever. And so he escapes to a monastery where two monks nurse him back to health, but his face is burned, his body's burned somewhat beyond recognition. Despondent, he drinks himself into oblivion, trying to drink himself to death, but he has a vision of an angel who calls him by his name, Jacob, and the angel tells him that his destiny is to seek out evil on earth and be the wrath of God, since that's how he gets the name, the Wraith of God. Cutting back again to the present and what's going on in Calamity, the Wraith is in his makeshift lab in the silver mine and discovers a way he can make a serum that will block the cause of lycanthropy, reverting a werewolf back to their human form, so it won't matter if they have the amulet in their possession or not. With this in mind, he goes back to town and confronts the gambler, who then takes him out to the prostitute's den, which was the other woman. They're all werewolves. And so he has to fight all of them to try and get the amulet back. Including the Missouri wolf that he was tracking. He does manage to fight the one from Missouri, and he defeats that wolf, only he gets attacked by the female werewolf, and he manages to inject her with the serum, which returns her to human form, and Esther then shows up and shoots the woman dead. Now she realizes that now she realizes that the Wraith is a mortal human instead of some, supernatural entity. The sheriff arrives and tells them to get out of town. Back at the mine, Esther confronts him one last time, and he finally confesses that he's Jacob and asks her to give him the cure to the lycanthropy or to shoot him dead before it's too late because he's been wounded. At first she refuses, but then he then tends to his wounds, but deliberately makes it extra painful and gives him the serum before he transforms. And then she tells him she's no longer his servant, but that they're equal partners. I'm going to stop here and leave the final reveal of the stories for you because there's other stuff to discover, and there are a couple of loose ends that need to be resolved that are resolved at the end of the story, but it's cool. And there is an epilogue to the story that takes place in modern day time at the hideout of what we know as the nightclub, the superhero team that appeared in Aaron's Garbage Man trade paperback. And there's an extra reveal that's extra cool as it turns out, but I'm not going to reveal that to the viewers who haven't read the book yet. What do I think? The race identity and his relationship to Esther and why he behaves the way he does is a telegraph just a bit to me, but Lopresti does a nice job of interspersing the histories and origins of both Jacob and Wraith and Esther throughout the story. He does try to offer some red herrings as to who the werewolves are, but he tries a bit too hard and thus reveal that the climactic sequence is pretty solid, but it's also expected. Story pacing is well done. There are some supernatural elements that aren't entirely explained, like the horse coming back from the dead. And so you kind of wonder, like Esther does, if there's something more going on here. Maybe there is, probably, maybe, kind of, sort of, but it's not going to get revealed right away. It's not revealed in this story. Lopresti's art is solid. He was experimenting with his inking, and there are occasional panels where the rougher look he's using might get cluttered under the coloring, whereas a slicker inking style might have been a little bit clearer, but overall it's very well done. Gabe Eltaeb's color palette was pretty solid throughout. I didn't notice any mistakes or faux pas. Warren Montgomery's lettering had some weird effects in the black body of the race speech balloons in certain panels. It didn't affect the ability to read them, but it's like there's a slightly lighter shade of black-gray cracks that were noticeable on a few pages. I did mention this to Aaron back when the book came out, and it was kind of a layer glitch in the production between layers, and they got that corrected in subsequent stories. But the real faux pas with the book is the ISBN number. As regular viewers recall, I used to, because this is an older review, but I used to list ISBN numbers on trade paperbacks so that you could find it in stores or at the library. Because Aaron sold this directly himself and wouldn't be in all that many stores, it's not as much of an issue, but he had two completely different numbers, one on the back cover and one on the indicia on the inside. And I didn't know which one was the correct one. I believe the second printing, he had that corrected. So yeah, there is that. The next installment, which we'll talk to about in a minute, called Blood Hunters, where they take on Nosferatu, will be a book with multiple stories in it, featuring the nightclub Garbage Man and Kit Carter. Recommended for ages 14 up. I give this book a 4 out of 5. Again, I did check with Aaron about the ISBN number. The outside number was correct, and we don't know why the mistake was made, but it was corrected in the future print. So consider it a special glitch of the crowdfunded first print edition, I guess you could say. Aaron Lopresti's Wraith of God 2, Blood Hunters, $25. Pretty much the same deal, except new colorist Oli Belamonte Jr., pages 1 through 3 and 8 through 53, while Gabe did pages 4 through 7. The additional cover artist for this title was Simon Bisley, lettering again by Warren Montgomery, print production by Kurt Hathaway, and proofreader Christina Lynn. This was originally released in September of 2023, and this book has 4 stories: Wraith of God and Blood Hunters, the nightclub story, a Garbage Man story called Night of the Living Jed, and the Kit Carter Galactic Ranger, collecting the original comic book strips of 14 one-page shorts. In Blood Hunters, Wraith and Esther are facing a vampire in Faithful, Tennessee. That's a name for a town, right?
Yeah.
Only Esther's personal faith has been shaken. Her doubt in Jacob Wraith and his vision's abilities, based on what happened in the last adventure, So she's beginning to think it's all parlor tricks, sleight of hand, and mind games, and that she was suckered in by a dangerous gunman. So when the duo confront one of the vampire's brides, her resolve falters, and the bride is able to ignore Esther's use of a cross against it. Hold on a sec. Sorry. I got something happened there by page there. Okay. Wraith has to rescue her, which in turn makes him become overprotective and of her and forbids her to join him on his missions moving forward. But are the Count and his brides too much for even an avenging Wraith of God? And can Esther find her own path back to her own faith in God and in herself before it's too late for them both? Because this story is linear with no flashbacks as in the first story, I think the pacing in this book, in this story, is better. It has a spaghetti western meets horror or Hammer horror films vibe to the story, presumably deliberately. And he really captures a classic 1960s, 1970s horror comic vibe, only modernized in his own art style. The plot is solid, and while he is clearly deriving from certain things and from classic themes and concepts from other source material, he is making the story modestly his own. The characters Wraith and Esther are still struggling to reconcile their relationship and rebuild their trust in one another, and they are slowly mending those fences by the end of the story, but you can tell both characters still clearly have feelings for one another, and it will be interesting to see if and when there ever leads to romance between them in the future. This gets a 4 out of 5 as well for this particular story. The backup stories, The Nightclub by Aaron, with inker Matt Ryan, colors by Kelsey Shannon, and letterer Kurt Hathaway. And this is the back cover by the variant cover by Simon Bisley that you're seeing on this page. It's a group of mysterious heroes brought together by Mr. Midnight, who has a clandestine connection to the Wraith of God. In fact, they may, in fact, be one and the same in some unknown way, although the nightclub is in the here and now, and the Wraith's adventures are back in the 1880s. And the team protects the denizens of Morneau City from evil, the same city that Garbage Man lives in as well. So he's got them all in the same general vicinity of each other. In this tale, a giant alien elephant man from another dimension has found himself transported to our world and is looking for answers on how to get back home. Two of the team, Sculpture and Metal, face off against the alien to a semi-standstill until Mr. Midnight calls a truce, and the elephant man, who begrudgingly gets nicknamed Trunk,
fitting,
joins them as Midnight promises to try to help him get back to his homeworld. Shortly thereafter, the cosmic entity known as Aeon Chance appears while Midnight is by himself in his lab, explaining that it was Chance's action that brought the elephant to them, and thus the team will move forward from there. That was an okay introductory story for the team. I've known about this particular set of characters of Aaron since the late 1990s, originally called The Creeps, but it was changed because another party published another comic called Creeps. And now, of course, Mark Miller has his book called Nightclub, which came out after Aaron's, but since Mark Miller's in the public eye, people are going to think that he copied Mark Miller. You just can't win. So I admit I was hoping for and expecting a little bit more of a story after waiting so long to see a story with these characters. But I am intrigued to see what the reveal between Wraith, Mr. Midnight will be in due time. I'm pretty sure they're just one and the same in some way, in that Aeon Chance gave him an immortality or something to be, or whatever. We'll figure it out when we get that far. The other characters didn't really get enough spotlight for me to get into them yet. Steel is a kind of a Metal Man version of Metamorpho. Sculpture has some interesting abilities in that she can basically take water and her body and generate mud and cement like Clayface does. So it was interesting, but just not quite enough story. And I wish there had been a little more story with those characters. But it's an interesting start anyway. The next backup story is Garbage Man, Night of the Living Jed. Written and drawn by Aaron, colors by Dan Lawless, lettering by Kurt Hathaway. Attorney Richard Ethan Morse was on the fast track to partnership with the law offices he worked at Morno City when he was given an account for a client and discovered that they were conducting illegal activities. When they discover he might be a whistleblower, they try to assassinate him at a chemical plant, but instead his chemically altered body merges with the refuse and toxins at the plant, turning him into Garbage Man. Now a monster, he dwells in the forest outside the city when he stumbles upon a zombie who makes his way to a cabin. It says GB, it's supposed to be GM. Garbage Man meets a redneck who thinks he's just another zombie that he's called back from the dead, and that the chemicals, using the chemicals that the plant left behind after they were shut down. And you have to see the story in the Garbage Man trade paperback from Dark Horse for that. But this is the front page to Night of the Living Jed, and you're looking over the shoulder of Garbage Man. Hank, the redneck farmer, has a whole zombie family reunion going on, and Garbage Man is freaking out, telling Hank he has to put the bodies back to rest. This upset Hank, who, well, let's just say he's a few sandwiches short of a picnic and doesn't like GM's opinion on the matter, especially since he thinks GM's just another zombie, his cousin Jed, to be exact. Okay, Jed, every Thursday you know you're a millionaire because you shot some crude. You know? I never did like you. Yeah. When GM learns that Hank's been using the plant's chemicals as fertilizer in his garden, he becomes concerned that Hank will get sick and turn into a monster like himself. But it's too late. Hank has already become a monster, transforming from a meek little man into a giant. Think Hanover Fist from Bernie Wrightson's Captain Stern segment in Heavy Metal movie, and the two fight. In the midst of the battle, Hank's cabin catches a flame, and as all of his zombie family burn to ash. Hank dives into the fire and perishes as well. After Garbage Man cleans up and leaves, Ann Chance shows up and hints at more things to come with adventures with that. Reasonably executed story. Lopresti ticking off boxes of influence such as Bernie Wrightson while he's trying to do certain things. Yep, that's what he's doing, but he's also got this corny humor in there, which kind of sways the story away from being derivative of Swamp Thing or Wrightson's creepy work, and again gives it at least a modest new coat of paint, as it were. Unfortunately, Lawless's colors are not my favorite here. I think they run a bit too dark for my personal liking, but it isn't bad, and the color palette is consistent and sensible. The image you're seeing right there is actually brighter on the screen than it is in the printed book. I'm going to show you the printed book in just a second. You can't hardly make out the green on the trees and bushes in that on the book. It shifted a little too dark in the printed version. The story is, it's okay. Let me go ahead and give that, but I give this particular story, backup story, a 3.5. Can you see what I mean by printing darker in the printed version? Or is the shine on the paper too much?
There is a lot. I can see it a little bit, but there is a lot of shine on the paper.
Yeah. But it is considerably darker. I was rather surprised on the darker on the shine. Sorry about that. I wish I could have scanned it, but it would break the binding on the book. But anyway, we have one more story for that, and that is the Kit Carter Galactic Ranger first story, where she meets Schmagma. Originally created to be an online comic script, Kit Carter is about a woman and her partner murder the astro ship, and they serve in Gaff. This is the collection of the first 14 one-page comic strips as an introduction to the character in print for the first time. Again, very cute homage to the classic 1940s to 1960s SF comics and 50s B movies, modernized in Lopresti's art style. Plays up to some of the usual tropes. One of the baddies is a Ming the Merciless wannabe, but it's all very tongue-in-cheek without being too crass and fun. It's 4 out of 5 because it's just a little bit short. thing going on that one. So overall, it's really quite the bang for the buck and worth the price tag. And I realize if you add up the numbers I gave each story, it would come out to a 3.75 out of 5 rating. But I'm going to give it 4 stars overall because the stories are so diverse, and you're getting like 100 pages of story in the book. So it's certainly worth the $25 price tag. 4 out of 5 stars. And what do you think of that, John?
That looks good. And it does sound like you're getting your money's worth for quality stories and the amount of pages you get.
Okay, now if you guys are noticing, I don't know if you guys can tell what John's wearing. So let me go ahead and flip these around a little bit. No. Let me go ahead and bring you up close. There you go.
Yeah.
He's wearing his 101 Dalmatians shirt.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that. But before we do that, let me go ahead and show you guys where you can get Aaron's books. This is the Aaron Lopresti web store, and the address is right here, store.aaronlopresti.com. I'll put that up again a little bit here. But you can get the Garbage Man trade paperback from Dark Horse, the softcover Kit Carter for $35, the signed and numbered hardcover for $65, Wraith of God, that's the B cover for $30. And this is mostly, I believe all these prices are including the shipping and handling. I could be mistaken, but I think they are. There was a second printing black and white cover variant for the first Wraith of God. There's a sketchbook, some other stuff as well there. Those are some of the featured products. Let's go ahead and view all the products real quick, at least for the books. There's a color second printing as well for Wraith of God. That one has sold out for second printing, so I guess you'd have to try and find that. The Blood Hunters cover A, Garbage Man, different ones. Power Cubed is another one of his creator-owned series that Dark Horse originally released, as Garbage Man was. Garbage Man was actually released through DC first, and then they gave him the rights back and he put it through Dark Horse. But a lot of the reason he does the crowdfunding scene is because people aren't buying the books from Dark Horse when he's going through Dark Horse. He's actually having to buy the print runs himself and then sell them on the crowdfunding scene. And again, whether that's because it's the wrong size format or just because retailers are reluctant to support anything, I don't know. But I think it's foolish of the retailers not supporting him. But lots of cool stuff here to get. You can also get the Overstreet price guides that he did the covers for.
Cool.
So lots of interesting things there again. And again, there's the address, https://store.aaronlopresti.com/. So that's where you can get them, or you can find Aaron on Facebook and ask for more information. Okay. Let's go ahead, and since John was, I said, showing his Dalmatians, let's go ahead and talk about one of the books that you read this week.
All right, Disney Villains, Cruella de Vil. This is a 5-issue miniseries published by Dynamite Entertainment. Writer is Sweeney Boo. The artist is Mariana Puglia for the line work, and Ellie Wright for the color. Letters Jeff Eckelberry. Main cover, Sweeney Boo. Editor Nate Cosby. Genre comedy/adventure. Rating, Dynamite listed as teens, but I give it a 10 and up, because I really don't think there's anything here that is just for teens. I do think it's cool for 10 and up. What it's about.
Well, hold on a second. I thought it was rated all ages. That's why I put all ages. If Dynamite put it for teens, and there's probably some more mature elements coming up in later issues. So we'll wait on that when we do more issues, I guess. But go ahead with what it's about.
Okay, so the beloved Disney villain in her own fabulous book, Darling, even though there's absolutely no hard evidence that noted couturier Cruella de Vil was ever involved in the theft of any Dalmatian puppies. Her name has been ruined in all of the tabloids, and now her reputation in the fashion world is hanging by a thread, which is why she's willing to do anything to restore her good name, even stealing the royal family's priceless jewels. How will that restore her reputation, you ask? You'll just have to pick up this brand new entry in Dynamite's Disney Villains Adventures to find out. So, as you can tell from my shirt, I love 101 Dalmatians. I think it truly is. It is a Disney classic. I've had this shirt since the 90s. Like, I got it at a Disney store in the mall, which I know dates me now, but yeah, I've had this shirt for a long time. But I love 101 Dalmatians. So
if you can still fit in that shirt when you got it in the 90s.
Oh, this is a very oversized shirt to begin with. So
but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, you need that.
Yeah.
Again. All right.
So 1961's 101 Dalmatians is truly a Disney classic. It was a much needed hit that saved Disney Animation Unit. It introduced a contemporary visual style with the then new Xerox process, and of course, it introduced one of Disney's most memorable villains, Cruella de Vil. So this series picks up where the movie left off, with Cruella attempting to pick up the pieces and move forward, even if it means reunited with the baddies Horace and Jasper, and even teaming up with a jewel thief named Emily Besler's. And yes, embezzler, and it was not until I literally typed that sentence that I got the joke. So I was a little slow in that regard. So even though Pongo, Perdita, and the puppies are nowhere in sight, which is another reason I had to wear my shirt to give them some representation, but dogs do still play an important role in the story, especially Jeffries, who acts as our host. Cruella's having a conversation with her butler, Archibald, and he asks her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know what that is. You had an issue with the book, and it got the typing got messed up. You were asking me about a certain page, page 16 or something like that,
Yeah.
And we'll show the page in just a second. Here. Where she's asking her assistant Archibald, and he mentions to her, well, we could auction off some of your items, and she was like, what are you talking about? And the lettering is off on it. Big mistake. We'll show that in just a second here. All right. And the skin tone coloring here is just horrible as well, but we'll get into that as well. But in the second panel, you can see her dialogue balloon has a long tie to the one in the right corner. Well, the bottom right corner of the second panel should be Archibald speaking and not her. So that's a mistake on behalf of the letterer that the editor should have caught. And it'll probably, I'm sure they caught it after the fact. It'll be corrected in the trade collection, but it got by them in the first pass, I guess you could say, of the book.
Yeah.
The coloring here is just terrible, though. Her skin tone is purplish gray throughout the book. And it should be a very light cream or off-white with very pale gray shadow effects for her skin tone. Very similar to the effect that you see of the teacup smoke. That's the tone it should be. So you've got it right next to her face, and you can see how off this looks. I thought when I first looked at this stuff that the page was redshifted by some glitch, but then I looked at the whole book itself online, and the whole book has that god-awful lilac gray tone of her skin tone. So that was an actual creative choice, and I don't know why.
I don't get that at all.
No,
and it's like if you look at like all of the all of the covers for this series have the proper coloring. But all of the interior pages don't. And it's like, I really don't get that.
Yeah, you can see this is closer to the right skin tone, even though this does have a little bit of a grayish purple tone to it. It still is more of because it's offsetting to the cream of the fur coat. You can still see, though, it's meant to be that creamish, pale skin tone and not purple. So there's that. So yeah, you gave it a 3 out of 5 on this, and I gave it a 2 out of 5, and partly because of the bad coloring, and then because of that lettering mistake that you did. I am beginning to think that the editor for this book and for all the Disney villains books, all the Disney books, Nate Crosby is just too overworked and can't keep up on it. But you asked me what happens when a book gets shipped out like this. You admit you made your mistake. Yeah, you ask your mea culpas of the audience, and you correct it in the collected trade paperback. That's all you can do. Because to ask publishers or retailers to send it back and then destroy it and pay for another print run is going to be way too much.
Yeah. So,
especially when you've done 19 or 20 different covers the way they did, because they're all that way. So, that's insane. Yeah. That's why you need to stop doing bullshit covers, publishers. We don't need 50 bazillion covers. You need to focus on the quality of your books. Just saying. But that's just me. So, and Chris would probably agree with us if he was here on that. He was going to talk a little bit about that, but unfortunately, something just happened at the house that he had to take care of. So, again, his apologies for not being with us. Let's see. Let's go ahead. Did you report Power Lords?
I did. I didn't have time to write anything up on it.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go ahead and let you read the Power Lords next then.
Okay. And I'll just say my 3-star rating again on Cruella de Vil, again, like it's not a terrible series, but it's not great. And
yeah, it's middle of the road. It's just an average book.
yeah, and I did, coloring issues aside, I did like the line work. Like the story's at its best when there are dogs involved. Like I think that's when the artwork is at its best, and the line work actually really does remind me of the style, like of 101 Dalmatians.
Right.
As you had that, it's 101 Dalmatians. It was the Xerox process, so the animators drawings had
that one page didn't really reflect that I showed.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. I didn't have time to get all the pages that you sent me to show it all.
Okay.
But yeah, we can go back and revisit that in a later episode. But if you want,
but the coloring, the coloring just, I mean, it
really distracts from it.
Really, it did.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Again, we got a lot of stuff to cover, so let's go ahead and move on to Power Lords number 1. Let's read
Power Lords number 1. And as the cover says, this is the part of the Nacelle-verse. Publisher Oni Press, writer Dennis Culver and Matt Hodson, artist V. Ken Marion, colorist Andrew Dahlhaus, lettering Taylor Esposito of Ghost Glyph Studios, cover Dustin Weaver, editor Carl Bullers, designer Winston Gambro, genre sci-fi action adventure, released just this past week, January 29th, 2025. What it's about. The legend of the Power Lords begins anew. Enter an alien realm beyond imagination as the beloved 1980s toy icons return to fuel 2025's most epic, galaxy-spanning cosmic adventure from acclaimed writer Dennis Culver of Unstoppable Doom Patrol and blockbuster artist V. Ken Marion of Green Lantern. When deep space smuggler Adam Power comes into possession of the mysterious power jewel, he finds himself transformed into something far greater and more powerful than the sum of his parts, only to discover he's been drafted into an eons-old battle between good and evil that could rend entire galaxies asunder. The next chapter of the Nacelle-verse starts here as the Power Lords are reborn for a new generation.
Okay. One thing I did notice is that John and my local comic shop has ordered, sold out, reordered, sold out again on a partial arrival of the reorder, and may sell out the remaining reorder even when those books arrive. I didn't think that this franchise was that beloved, so it is something of a surprise to see it selling that well locally, at least at the store that John and I frequent the most. I was looking forward to this book. It was the only one of the Nacelle-verse I was really interested in because I did remember the toys. They were some of the last action figures I got as a kid before my mother got out of the toy business as she brokered the sale of Toy City toy store chains to Toys R Us in 1983. Unfortunately, I never got the DC comics that went with them, and so I've never seen the original DC comic 3-issue miniseries to have some sort of comparison to the current version to see how similar in concept they may or may not be. I do have to go hunt those down now that I've looked at who worked on it, because who worked on the DC book was a young Mark Teixeira who penciled, and Jeff D of D&D and Villains and Vigilantes gaming art fame inked that. So I got to see what that looks like actually. But I digress. Let's talk about this version. Part of the reason I was interested in this book was because of Dennis Culver's run on Doom Patrol. I did like that series, so I figured I'd give this a chance. Dustin Weaver's cover here is very nice. However, the story leaves a little bit to be desired. It's not that Culver's plot is bad. It isn't. The Power Lords have to try and stop an escaped Arcus and his cronies, and when they come to attack their home base of Vulcan Rock, and that is spelled VOL instead of VUL, so that Star Trek doesn't sue them or Paramount. Adam, being an impetuous fool, attacks Arcus up close, just as Arcus wants. He steals Adam's power jewel out of his forehead somehow, and then uses it to open up a wormhole, which then Adam has to travel through the wormhole to try to recover the stone, all while in his human form. So he gets basically sucked into this wormhole, and it's a time portal and a space time, everything screwed up. So wherever he lands in is like the future, and we find him in his human form, still looking for the power jewel with two new smuggling partners, Lipa and Back Attack. Anyway, his old crew and the Power Lords and Arcus minions are also looking for him and or the jewel, and have been for the last year and a half of real time. So who knows what will happen when the inevitable meeting of forces arrives. Ken Marion's art, while all right to look at, isn't as consistent as Dustin Weaver's, and I would have preferred to have Dustin do the interiors as well as the cover. Now, Marion also makes Adam look way too young, like a late teenager or early 20-something, instead of the early 30-something that the original character toy design and the original DC Comics present. And that sort of bothers me, but I don't know. Maybe it was just what they wanted to do with the concept. I will certainly keep reading for the next two issues, at least, because I think this is only going to be a 3-issue miniseries to start. But my expectation for the series has become a bit muted after the first issue. I give it 3 out of 5. What did you think, John?
I would also give it 3 out of 5. Unlike you, I did not have the toys growing up, so I really knew the Power Lords by name only. Mm-hmm. So I really came into this fresh, mm-hmm. And and my general thought is it's certainly not a bad first issue, and it's enough to make me want to read more. To me, it's a lot of setup.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for the payoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's very true. Yeah, so lots of that going on with this type of stuff, unfortunately. A very common theme throughout the rest of the books that we're going to talk about. But yeah, we're both pretty much like-minded on that one. Okay, next book, Canto, A Place Like Home, number 1 through 6. Publisher Dark Horse Comics, $3.99 each. Writer David M. Booher, artist Drew Zucker, colorist Vittorio Astone, letterer and world design, cover artist Drew Zucker. The genre is action, adventure, fantasy. It was originally published from June 5th, 2024 to the present. The last issue just came out last week. Ages 10 plus. What it's about. This is it. This saga concludes as the final arc of the Shrouded Man saga rushes forward and toward the final battle. The tiny clockwork knight Canto returns after making the ultimate choice to save his people above all else. But he has amassed allies in the war against the Shrouded Man, but even an army may not be enough to stop the evil sorcerer's quest to conquer Canto's people and enslave them forever. What did I think? A really stellar send-off to one of the best all-ages comics to come down the pipeline in years. Canto was 29 total issues over 5 years and 2 different publishers. Canto was originally published at IDW, with the last 2 miniseries were published at Dark Horse. And now that this whole first origins story or whatever is now completed, it sets up pretty well. And it sets up the series to go into the next arc just as easily as Frodo and Bilbo setting off on the last elven ships for Valinor, the Lord of the Rings. And I do not find it one bit ironic that the promo scene for the next story arc finds Canto and his demon pet associate Miko on a sailing boat in the ocean as he leaves his people behind after they've been saved. Was I satisfied with this book? in a manner of speaking, yes. The resolution of the story by Booher leaves a very good balance of happiness and sadness for the characters. Zucker's doing his usual solid work, maybe even turned up a notch by the 4th or 5th issue of this series. But since it had been so long since I read the earlier issues, I was having a hard time keeping up with who was who. And maybe this is not the story to come in on the last story arc. I think you need to read the whole thing in the beginning. And since Chris isn't here, he can't step in and give us his thoughts on that. But we briefly spoke about it off camera over the past week, setting this episode up. And he said that was an issue. He really couldn't get into the characters. There was just too much backstory he didn't really know. So I would presume that my assumption on that is correct. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and Chris gave it a 3 out of 5. And I don't think you read it, did you, John?
No,
okay.
But I will say that that is a nice looking cover.
Mm-hmm. So, there is that. But there's I've reviewed Canto in the past. I've always had high praise for it. It's almost always in the 4 to 4.5 range for the books. So, like I said, I can understand why someone who came in late to the series like Chris did might not get it or might not be feeling it, because you really do have to have the whole experience, I think, on that one. But that's kind of the way comics are written these days. So you can't come in on issues 20 to 30 or whatever and really know what's going on, right?
Right.
So anyway, our next stuff is Comic Book Creator Magazine, issues 35 to 37, $10.95 each. Publisher, Tomorrow's Publishing. Various writers and artists contributing articles and other content for ages 13 and up. Genre, interview, and historical review magazine, released December of 2024, fall of 2024, and January of 2025. What is it about? Each issue of Comic Book Creator spotlights the career of a key historical writer, editor, or artist, and then has additional articles about other talents as well. In issue 35, the key person is the late writer, editor extraordinaire, Denny O'Neil, discussing his many seminal works as a writer, including the Green Lantern Green Arrow run, the Wonder Woman run, and his Batman work. Also featured is Arnold Drake, who would have been 100 years old in 2024. He passed away in 2007 at the age of 83, but his characters, especially the Doom Patrol, have been thriving as of late with the TV shows and the books and everything, mostly the HBO Max series. So that, they wanted to really talk about him a little bit, and they give us a 3-part interview with Arnold. This issue is the first part of the 3 parts. There's one in each one of these 3 issues, so it's really cool that way. Alternative cartoonist Tim Hensley is interviewed. Jay Stevens discusses his series Dwellings and more in issue 35. In issue 36, which is this one with Tom Palmer painted cover. He's best known for inking Gene Colan on Tomb of Dracula, John Byrne on Silver Surfer and X-Men Hidden Years, John Buscema on Avengers, and much more. Again, the second part of the Arnold Drake interview is continued. A profile on artist Lee Mars, who was one of the under-recognized female artists of the underground and even a little bit of the mainstream scene back in the 70s and 80s, as well as additional materials. And in issue number 37, the key interview is with writer Steve Englehart, plus the final part of the Arnold Drake interview. Dan DiDio is actually in both 36 and 37, and there's much, much more in that issue as well. There's the cover for issue 37. What do I think? Tomorrow's really does the best news and interview review scenes in comics today. I love this magazine, and I also love Back Issue magazine. We'll talk about that next week. The O'Neil review was mostly stuff that we've seen, but I mean, come on. Denny O'Neil and his career has been discussed so often, it's kind of hard to find something really new to say. But it was well done. The Arnold Drake interview was wonderful. The Tom Palmer featurette was great. The Steve Englehart interview is really cool. All of this stuff featured in info. The Arnold Drake, the Englehart, the Palmer stuff, all featured information I didn't previously know. And that's the kind of comics news and reviews I like to read, is stuff that I don't know about already. Which stuff I kind of hope I provide for all of you on my channel, for some of you. But we'll see what you guys think about that. Let us know in the comments section about that supposition. My rating for the Comic Book Creator magazine is 5 stars. So make sure you check that out. And just so you know, don't order this from your retailer. Go online to tomorrows.com and order it direct, because due to the Diamond situation, they owe like the last 3 or 4 months of back issue, and all their magazines have not been paid for by Diamond. They may not recover any of that money. So they need people to buy direct from them to keep going. So make sure you go to tomorrows.com or look up Tomorrow's Publishing on the internet and buy direct from them, either via mail order or the PDF files of the magazine. Okay. Thoughts, John?
It looks like it's a very well done issue, and I mean, if you gave it 5 stars, that's reason enough to buy it. So
I'm trying to get through. There we go. Here's another one that we've got to get through. We got so many books to talk about tonight. Behemoth, one of 4, $3.99. Publisher Dark Horse Comics. Writer Grant Spatore and Ryan Engel. Artist, colorist Jay Martin. Letterer Frank Savetkovic. Editors Megan Walker and Tara McCarran. Designer Draken Reeves. Genre is science fiction, action, adventure. Released January 15th, 2025. Well, it's about when a giant monster attacks a city and swallows a bus full of civilians, one woman must fight for her life. Trapped inside the enormous beast, Sarah and her fellow bus passengers soon find out they're not alone. But what dangers lie within the belly of this beast, and who or what will they have to contend with in order to survive? Well, Chris was going to talk about it at length. Unfortunately, he's not here. He wondered why the book was called Behemoth, when a behemoth is a land-based kaiju, and this creature is a water-based kaiju. So shouldn't the book be called Leviathan, which is the water kaiju? I agree with him on that. And there were some other things that he talked about, but since he's not here, we may come back and revisit his thoughts in a future episode. But this whole issue is pretty much set up. It's not my favorite thing. Apparently, the monster made it from 600 miles off of the coast of Nova Scotia to hit New York City without anybody seeing it on radar, even though the woman on the ship in the story spotted it on her radar in the first few pages of the story. Plus, there's all kinds of dead fish on the beach, giant waves crashing in on the coastline, but nobody saw this thing coming. Come on. The other thing is the concept. I mean, basic science. You've just been swallowed into it and put into a giant stomach that should be filled with what, for humans, would be a sea of gastric acid. That's highly concentrated hydrochloric acid that would eat your flesh and bone away in very little time. Now, I realize that this is just fantasy story, and sometimes you have to turn your brain off and not think when you're reading. I get that. But for me, it's I can do that when I'm watching a television show. Like, you know, the same issue happens in like Pacific Rim and other movies like that. So it's not like this hasn't happened before, but when it comes to reading, I don't turn my brain off. I'm engaged. I'm thinking as I'm reading and reacting to the book. So that kind of just took me out of the story. The other thing is the characters just aren't that interesting. Our lead heroine, Sarah, is a poor woman who works multiple jobs and lives in her taco truck and can't make ends meet. and she's hoping to win some street food contest to try and get on her feet financially. And her friend Manny, who came to tow her truck to the garage, breaks when the truck breaks down, so she can't get to her regular job. That they're like the main two characters of the story. And I'm asking, how is she supposed to compete in the competition if her truck is in the shop being worked on?
Yeah.
What is significant about these two characters to make me care about what's happening? You've got an entire busload of other characters who haven't even been introduced as characters yet. You got the people in the ships that were destroyed at sea. What? There were no survivors, or are they the ones who are going to show up in subsequent issues? What? The ocean water acid bath didn't drown them and kill them? Again, I realize you just have to go with it, but is it too much to ask the writers to at least think about some of the science when you write? I don't know. I'm not feeling this one. I wish Chris were here to talk about it. Chris gave it a 3.5. I gave it 2.5. So there you go. But again, I wish Chris would have been able to come on tonight. I can't talk about why. But he said something serious happened at home.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly. I don't have the details, but hopefully everything will be all right. Next book, Cruel Kingdom, issues 1 and 2, $4.99 each. Publisher, EC Comics Owners Press. Writers and artists are various. It's an anthology type series. Genre is fantasy adventure, released January 8th for the first issue, and just last week or this week for issue number 2. What it's about: behold the bloody barbaric age of wizards, knights, dragons, and witches in a reimagined, modernized EC style. Join creators such as Al Ewing, Chris Condon, Greg Pak, Leo Max, and more as they weave their sorcerous stories of fatal fantasy and skullduggery. What do I think? I love the covers to both issues. This cover is Liam Sharp, and the other cover, I'm not exactly sure who did it off the top of my head, but the stories, especially the first issue, they really missed the mark in terms of the genre. In the first issue, you're blending the science fiction elements, and it just felt like the stories would have been better fits in their Cruel Universe title instead. The stories themselves in issue number 1 were just okay. The best fantasy story in issue number 1 was Death and Pickaxes by Chris Condon and Charlie Adlard. And I do think the best overall story was Friendly Visitors by Al Ewing and Kano, but that story could have been just as easily presented. It probably should have been presented more in Cruel Universe, and it would have fit better there. Issue number 2, good cover. I love the design of the Skull Mountain city tower. And I like the kind of Don Quixote knight in the foreground. It's a major step up from issue number 1 in terms of getting the stories in the right genre. The pacing is just right for the twists that are essential for the EC style story. Very well done. There was no best story in issue number 2 because all 3 stories were top notch. I liked them all equally well. Liked the plot twist done on each one of them. But they were somewhat of a quick read, and I kind of wish there was a 4th story. But when I got through the second issue, I had that there's no more kind of feeling that you're supposed to get when you're reading a good comic. Rating for number 1, 3 out of 5 by both myself and Chris. But the second issue, I gave it a 5 because, like I said, it gave me that feeling you're supposed to get when you're reading a really good comic, and I can't wait to read the next issue. I want more. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. So I hope that as the series progresses, we get more like issue number 2 than issue number 1. And I don't think you had a chance to look at that.
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right. Our next book. Some of these Chris would have been doing the reads if he were here, but so if my throat gets a little bit wonky from reading too much, I apologize.
I can read some of them if you want.
Yeah, go ahead and read this one.
HOWL #1, publisher Ahoy Comics, writer Elisa Whitney, artist is it Morissette?
Yep.
Letterer Rob Steen, designer John J. Hill, editor Tom Payer, backups by writer Kirk Vanderbeek and artist Carol Lay, Bryce Ingman, and Amelie Sullivan. Genre science fiction, released January 15th, 2025. What it's about: marry a science fiction writer, become science fiction. That's the law of Greenwich Village in the late 1950s, home of poets, artists, musicians, writers, their put-upon partners, and the extraterrestrial spores that are secretly taking them over. Will any of them figure it out before they are all mindless zombie pets of the spores? So it sounds like this is an invasion of the body snatchers type of situation.
Kind of, sort of, but not quite. This is brilliantly written by Elisa Whitney, daughter of famed science fiction author Robert Sheckley. The story is pseudo-autobiographical. Many of the relationships between the characters are akin to that of her with her parents and her parents' relationship to one another and to other people. And it's done very satirically. It's smart. It challenges the reader to consider the period of history and what the culture was at the time, how society had viewed women, how it viewed non-marital sex and other things. And we see where the author is satirizing different aspects through the characters' experiences and the fallout of those events. Morissette's art services the story very well also. It has a modern 1960s vibe to it. It just really feels like it fits what it's supposed to. The additional short prose fiction pieces, which are something of a normal thing found in Ahoy Comics, gives the book an extra pulp noir layer of subtext that those of us who are well-versed in science fiction reading and know who her father was and his history and we know about the different subcultural clique groups of that era and how that all plays into the comic book. It's like it's brilliant. But if you don't have that kind of knowledge and you're just reading it on the surface level of the story and you don't know all the subtext that's going on, you're gonna still have it. You're still gonna find it engaging enough to keep you interested and want to know what happens next. If this book maintains the level of quality throughout its run, this should be a top book of the year candidate and receive some Eisner consideration, in my opinion. Chris gave it 4 out of 5. He loved the book as well. He was looking forward to talking more about this. Unfortunately, we might come back and revisit and let Chris talk about it when he comes back. I give it 4.5. I couldn't quite give it a 5. There's just a little bit of a quirkiness that it might be. I'm thinking because it's so in depth to the subtext that a casual reader might not pick up on some things. So that's why I gave it a 4.5. And I know you didn't get a chance to read it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but I really think people will enjoy that one. And then we have Shiver Suspense Stories, #1, $7.99. Publisher EC Comics Owners Press. This is another anthology book with various writers and artists. Genre horror comedy, released December 11th, 2024. What's it about? Sleigh bells ring, ain't it sickening? In the snow, blood is glistening. Things went askew as we made this comic for you. We're murdering in a winter wonderland.
Bravo, sir. Bravo.
Another one of the modern EC titles comes streaming down the chimney to make your spine chill and fill your stockings with dismembered body parts by the usual suspects: Jason Aaron, David Lapham, Jay Stevens, Benny Winters, and more. Better have some milk and cookies out. Making murder is hard work. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. What did I think? As per most of the modern EC titles like Cruel Kingdom, Cruel Universe, all these books, it's something of a mixed bag. Best story was The Bracketing Tale, Checking It Twice, which is what you kind of see on the cover here by Adam Hughes. This is one of the variant covers. it truly does capture the flavor of what an EC horror story is supposed to be. And while the cover does give that story away, sort of, it doesn't give the twist of the story, and the twist is what makes that story work so well. The best standalone story that was not going throughout the book, in my opinion, was The Last Ornament by Jason Aaron and Kano. But overall, I think the stories in this particular issue were well executed. However, what makes it a mixed bag, unfortunately, is the coloring of the classic EC classic story by Johnny Craig in the back of the book. It is garishly bad coloring, in my opinion. Yes, I know it's very difficult to restore the color of 1950s comics on the modern stock paper. It makes the color often look a little bit too bold and garish compared to old newsprint. Unfortunately, Chris isn't here to talk about what he would have done differently as a colorist. But then again, as Chris and I talked about this, it's not necessarily what you would do, it's what your boss wants you to do. So, we don't know what the colorist who did the reconstruction of those pages was asked to do, to be certain. So I don't like it. Chris understood why I didn't like it. It wasn't a bad color job in context of what it was asked for, but I just think it could have been done better. Chris gave it a 4, I gave it a 4, and Chris gave it a 4.5. So again, very good book. Okay, that is all of our reviews for the week. Tomorrow, we got some. Hopefully, Chris will be back tomorrow. I'll talk to him a little bit after the show. We're going to be reviewing the movie Dracula Damned of the Sovereign, which is a Japanese anime movie based off of the Marvel series Tomb of Dracula. So we'll talk about the history of that and that tomorrow. In the meantime, next episode of reviews, we're going to be covering back issues 153 to 157. Midnight Tiger, which we were supposed to get to this week. I just didn't get a chance to get it read. Space Junk, same thing. Supposed to have been done this week. Didn't get to it. Welcome to the Maynard, issues 1 and 2. Outlaws, volumes 1 and 2. Avengers, the War Across Time, issues 1 through 5. Xeno, issues 1 through 3. The graphic novel Imagination, which I was supposed to try and get to this week, didn't quite make it. Steamroller Man #1 and Pandora Perfect, and more. We already have some of these read, because what actually happened, and the reason I didn't get some of these books reviewed this week, was because I read some of these books and reviewed them for this week by accident. I had them reversed. So that's why some of these are a little bit late on the reviews. But we'll be doing that for next week's news and reviews. And we hopefully will also have, we'll be talking more about that additional distribution situation. Hopefully we'll have some guests on that. And for some reason, something is missing. I don't know what. Let me see what's going on here. Here we go. And again, tomorrow night, we'll be back at 8 p.m. with the return of Anime Night with Dracula, Sovereign of the Damned. So until then, we hope you have a great weekend coming forward, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. And on Sunday, we'll be bringing back our live draw opposite the Super Bowl for all you folks that don't like to watch football. So I'll be here to
me,
like you, like Chris, like a lot of people. So I'll be here on Sunday afternoon or evening doing a live draw episode on Sunday. Okay, first of the 2025 year. So until then, thanks for watching. If you want to reach out to us, have questions, you can reach me at quoth_ravenlbr72@gmail.com, and you can reach John at grayfigaro@hotmail.com. You got anything else to add before we head out for the night?
No, just thanks everybody for watching and hope you have a good evening.
All right, then. See you next time, folks. Nevermore.